My job is to make sure that I'm doing the best possible job of over-communicating clarity. I take a tremendous amount of pride in that.
And a lot of you also got to take for where they've been. I mean, guys coming from certain programs are used to it. Guys coming from other programs aren't as much.
Cliff Kingsbury has agreed to a deal to become the Commanders' next offensive coordinator.
Washington Commanders fans must love the amount of content we've been making on them recently, because the amount of moves that they've been making over this past offseason is very impressive, and at least they're being aggressive in trying to reshape their culture. An unfortunate casualty of that culture being redone is the fact that 1 year ago, a man took a huge risk with his career, and now it's fair to say that it was a huge mistake. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, for the Super Bowl, PrizePicks is blessing us with an easy way to make $100. All Patrick Mahomes needs is one passing yard in the Super Bowl for a square to hit, which means he's pretty much a free square. First, download PrizePicks and use my promo code Mikerophone when you sign up to get up to $100 deposit match on your initial deposit, and then make these picks really quickly before they change the lines on them. So for me, I'm pairing Mahomes' free square with Isaiah Pacheco, who's had at least one touchdown in his last 5 games, so that's easy, and Christian McCaffrey, who has had more than 88.5 rushing yards in 4 of his last 5 games. Of course, I give away all my picks for free on Instagram, and I highly recommend you turn on notifications for my Instagram story so you can get the picks quickly before they move the lines and you lose your advantage. And thank you, PrizePicks, for the sponsor. Mike check 1212. What's going on, everybody? Eric Bieniemy is a former running back in the NFL. He spent 8 years in the NFL in the 90s playing for the Chargers, Bengals, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Once his time as a running back in the NFL ended, he became a coach. Most famously, he got his breakout gig in 2013, being the running backs coach for the Kansas City Chiefs from 2013 to 2017. But fortunately for Bieniemy, in 2018, the Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator position opened up because their existing offensive coordinator, Matt Nagy, took the Chicago Bears coaching job. So Eric Bieniemy fell into the most perfect situation for any coach, getting the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator underneath one of the greatest offensive minds in NFL history in Andy Reid, and also while coaching one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history in Patrick Mahomes. And for every year he was an offensive coordinator, he was always considered to be one of the top candidates for a head coaching position. But for some reason, that never came to be. Now, there were a myriad of rumors as to why this could be. Some people felt like Andy Reid was the primary brains of the operation, and Eric Bieniemy may have not really done much. Others claimed that he was just a horrible interview, and some people thought race had a lot to do with it. But at the end of the day, after 4 years with the Kansas City Chiefs, despite winning 2 Super Bowls with the Kansas City Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy decided that he needed to make a change. A lot of people thought that he was being backpacked to greatness, even after helping the Kansas City Chiefs win a Super Bowl following their trade of Tyreek Hill, which was no simple feat. So Eric Bieniemy did the unthinkable. He joined one of the biggest dumpster fires in the entire NFL with no true direction on offense. I mean, if you think about it, going into the 2023 season, the Washington Commanders didn't really know what they had in Sam Howell. He put together a few good games the year prior, but all they really knew was they had Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Brian Robinson. And for the most part, that was about it. So going from comfortable Kansas City, where you guys are consistently making it to the AFC Championship, to the Washington Commanders was considered to be a gigantic risk by Eric Bieniemy, but many people thought it was a necessary risk if he ever wanted to get that head coaching position, which at this point he had the accolades to warrant a opportunity as a head coach, but he still wasn't getting it. Now, Eric Bieniemy's career with the Washington Commanders was filled with controversy. I mean, before the season even started, there was this controversy about Eric Bieniemy's intensity scaring players away, and Ron Rivera had this to say about it at the time.
I said, understand what he's trying to get across to you, and I think, I think as they go and they talk and they listen to him, it's been enlightening for a lot of these guys. I mean, it's a whole different approach. You get a different kind of player from the players back in the past. Especially in light of how things are coming out of college football. So a lot of these young guys, they do struggle with certain things. And a lot of you also got to take for where they've been. I mean, guys coming from certain programs are used to it. Guys come from other programs aren't as much. So, you know, us as a coach, you know, I kind of have to assimilate and get a feel for everybody. You know, Eric has an approach, and it's the way he does things, and he's not going to change, and because he believes in it. Jack has his approach. You know, having been a head coach, I think Jack has a tendency to try and figure guys out a little bit more, as opposed to, hey, this is it, this is the way it's going to be, that type of stuff. Where Eric hasn't had that experience yet.
Now, it's also important to mention that Ron Rivera also said this about getting players out of their comfort zones, so maybe this was taken out of context. But immediately, it seems like Eric Bieniemy handled that situation with class and grace.
Before it even goes anywhere, I make it a point to address the conversation. Because one thing, my job is to be very observant. I got to know the people that I'm discussing and working with. So my job is to address. If there's something that they may have an issue with, please, let's discuss this. Here's the reason why I felt a certain way. Here's why I said it. Now, okay, I put it back on the player. And you got to understand, we're in a grown man's business. We're in a grown man's world. My job is to make sure that I'm doing the best possible job of over-communicating clarity. I take a tremendous amount of pride in that. They also know when I'm getting on them, ain't nothing personal. What's personal is that I want us to win. I expect that particular player to be great at all times. I expect the effort to be a standard that's accepted by all of us. So when you're not reaching that, it's my job to address it. So sometimes they may like the highlights and the praise, but sometimes they may not like it. And I'm perfectly fine with that, because that's my job. Because if I ain't doing my job, my ass get fired. So it's my job and my responsibility to make sure that I'm getting our guys to do what I expect them to do.
Apart from that, you had controversy from one of his ex-players, LaShawn McCoy, saying that Eric Bieniemy was a huge reason why he didn't want to play anymore.
What's his value? What makes him a good offensive coordinator? See, the problem is a lot of these people that go on social media, oh, he should be the guy for the job. They haven't played there. They're not in the locker room. When the plays are designed, that's Andy Reid. But when I asked about Eric Bieniemy, what makes him good? But he has no real responsibility. Now you go from the Chiefs, where you can hide behind Patrick Mahomes.
But at the same time, LaShawn McCoy isn't necessarily known for someone that gives really good, insightful takes. But he also did double down on this take.
I finished because me and the coordinator, we had a difference about different things, right? The reason why every year they keep hyping him up to get a coaching job, I don't get one because
he's talking about Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, and because some players, right, he talks to them a certain way, and some players would take it. I wouldn't take it.
Eric Bieniemy was
Good night.
why you stopped playing in Kansas City.
Yeah, come on, man. That's the player. They knew what it was.
The result, Patrick Mahomes stepped up to Eric Bieniemy's defense.
I mean, EB means the world to me, man. The way he holds me accountable, the way he makes me be great every single day, man. This man's one of a kind, man. He's one of the greatest.
And even Tyreek Hill came out to defend Eric Bieniemy.
When I first got in the league, I was a running back, and EB coached running backs. You feel me? So, like, he made me understand who I was as a player. And to him, it's bigger than football.
So we can establish the fact that Eric Bieniemy didn't leave Kansas City because the players didn't like him. He did it because he wanted to prove to the world that he could take a team that finished 24th in total offense the year prior and make them that much better. And in the very beginning of the season, it looked like that was going to be the case. The Washington Commanders started out the season 2-0 versus the Arizona Cardinals and the Denver Broncos, but in the 3 games following it, they were terrible. They had 5 turnovers versus the Buffalo Bills, and for the most part, you could say that this offense looked more of the same. They finished 25th in total offense this past year, and Eric Bieniemy's risk wasn't worth it at all. The Commanders went winless in the final 8 weeks of the NFL season, and were able to get the number 2 overall pick in this year's NFL draft, which is fantastic because that means Eric Bieniemy will get the opportunity to work with Drake May, maybe. But there's a gigantic problem here. You guys remember, I say this almost each and every time a huge transaction goes down. Whenever there's a brand new ownership group or a brand new general manager, or in this case both, or a new head coach, chances are that new regime will want to clean house and bring in their own guys. And that is definitely the case for the Washington Commanders. A few days ago, I made a video on how they hired Dan Quinn as their brand new head coach. Most definitely not their first choice, but it was the choice that they ended up settling on. The huge question following that was, who's the offensive coordinator going to be? Initially, my assumption was Eric Bieniemy, but it seems like that isn't the case. On Saturday, we brought you guys an update on the Caleb Williams situation, a video where we brought you guys up to date on everything going on, all the moves that were going on, the fact that the Raiders were considering hiring Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury worked with Caleb Williams, so if you're hiring Cliff Kingsbury, there's a good chance that you might be leaning towards drafting Caleb Williams. Chicago Bears had the opportunity to hire Cliff, but they ended up going with Shane Waldron. Well, it seems like, in this case, the Washington Commanders decided to officially hire Cliff Kingsbury. And this is a really exciting get, and it's official from Adam Schefter. According to Adam Schefter, the Washington Commanders are hiring Cliff Kingsbury as their new offensive coordinator, per league sources. Schefter continues to say, let the speculation begin. Cliff Kingsbury coached Caleb Williams last season. Williams was a standout QB at Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C. The Commanders currently hold the second overall pick and are in striking distance of the #1 pick that belongs to Chicago. And that's the question. Are the Washington Commanders going to trade up to the #1 overall pick to select Caleb Williams? On top of this, just a side note, because I would typically make this its own video, but I figured I'd bring you guys up to date. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in regards to Caleb Williams today. A lot of people are saying that the Chicago Bears are leaning towards taking Caleb Williams. I mean, Adam Schefter just said this on the Pat McAfee show.
Bears going to be willing to move on from taking Caleb Williams, which I believe seems to be widespread consensus across the league, that Caleb Williams will be the #1 pick.
Here's the thing with the whole, Cliff Kingsbury tie and whatnot, rumors of him and Caleb, or really any quarterback for Washington with Cliff, that, hey, we could take a young quarterback and we've got a guy that has the track record of getting that young quarterback to play well. They got to figure out why there wasn't that third or fourth year big jump.
And at the same time, Caleb Williams congratulated Cliff Kingsbury on his story. So we'll keep you guys covered if a big trade does happen between the Commanders and the Bears, but in this case, what happens to Eric Bieniemy? Well, this was his absolute worst nightmare. I mean, you go from winning the Super Bowl to taking a huge risk, and the huge risk absolutely didn't pay off. Dan Quinn has officially confirmed that Eric Bieniemy will not be returning to the Washington Commanders in 2024, which is what you can expect if there's a brand new offensive coordinator. You're not going to get two offensive coordinators working with one another. And the reason why this is such a nightmare scenario for Eric Bieniemy is he was let go at the absolute worst possible time, at the very, very end, when all the offensive coordinator jobs were taken. I mean, this is crazy. The Chargers just announced that they are hiring Greg Roman, who reunites with Jim Harbaugh. They worked together when Harbaugh was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, and then Greg Roman jumped over to John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens. Almost every single offensive coordinator position has been filled. The only team that has yet to find an offensive coordinator is the Seattle Seahawks. So the only place Bieniemy could end up is on the Seattle Seahawks. If that doesn't happen, then he'll likely join the Kansas City Chiefs as some sort of passing coordinator. So at the end of the day, it's really unfortunate this happened to Eric Bieniemy because statistically speaking, he wasn't able to improve the Commanders at all. But I think in this case, Eric Bieniemy may have bit off a little bit more than he could chew. It takes so much for a successful football team to work. You need synergy between the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback. The quarterback needs to make the right reads and the right plays. You need to have playmakers both offensively and defensively. I mean, there are so many aspects to achieving success in football, which is why winning football games and winning the Super Bowl is so meaningful. I don't want to say that Eric Bieniemy solely ruined the Washington Commanders, but he did prove that he wasn't going to move the needle with the Commanders. And unfortunately, by the time that they were able to build a new offense, they decided to move on from him and bring in Cliff Kingsbury. At the end of the day, I think he should have been a little bit more intelligent in regards to choosing a brand new team to be the offensive coordinator for. In hindsight, I could understand looking at Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson and thinking Sam Howell has a remarkable arm and he would be able to make it work there, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it this time. So I'll let you know what ends up happening with him. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think is going to happen with Eric Bieniemy? And let me know if you think he made a horrific mistake going to the Commanders. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic. Until our next upload.